Hello, Mistress Baton. Thank you so much for
Hello.
coming.
Thank you, Madam Justice, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So we've gotten to know each other over the past couple of years because you're in my book, The Heart of the Dominatrix, and you are a corporal punishment specialist. You're really well known for the cane.
Yes.
So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, I'm Mistress Baton and I'm a disciplinarian from Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm also a tourdom and I specialize in the use of the cane and the sjambok. And I specialize in corporal punishment and role play.
Yes. And you do some absolutely wonderful videos. You do some educational
Thank
videos
you.
on
Yes.
YouTube, which is really nice for those of us that want to learn more about judicial caning. And how do you pronounce it? Samjak? Can you say that word again?
Yes, the sjambok.
Shambak. Okay.
Yes.
Which is something that I wasn't familiar with prior to us starting to exchange. And I think I'd like to get one. I think I would like to learn a little bit more about this. You've inspired me, which is the case for a lot of women in the book. I go, oh, that's so cool what she's doing. I would really like to learn more about that subject. So for those of you listening, please check out Mistress Baton's YouTube channel. You can also find her on Twitter. You're on Instagram as well, I believe.
No, my Instagram account was deleted by Instagram, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Okay, you can certainly find her on Twitter where she's very active, and her YouTube channel. So, Mistress Baton, we were chatting the other day and we started asking each other, because you tour, I said, why don't you come to Paris? I would love to meet you. I can put you up. I have a lovely little dungeon that I'd love to invite you to. And you said, I don't know if there's really the demand in Paris. And I said, oh, that would be an interesting thing to discuss. So why do you think that the French, for example, have certain preferences as far as femdom goes, as far as female domination goes? What are some of the countries that you find high demand for your services, and some countries that you find low demand?
So the countries where I am most popular are the countries which the English colonized. Because the cane, which is my speciality and which I'm most known for, it's called the English vice. And all the countries that the English colonized, judicial corporal punishment was the cane. They used the cane. Certainly in later years, pre-1900, there was the cane wasn't used. Then floggers were used, or the cat of nine tails, whips. But after 1900, it was the cane in all the countries which the English colonized. So the English colonized South Africa, and that is why the cane is popular here as a corporal punishment implement. They colonized Australia. I'm very popular in Australia. I sell a lot of clips there. And both South Africa and Australia are known as countries where they play hard. And England is also known as a country where the corporal punishment part of BDSM, at least, it's known as a country where they play hard. So it's basically the countries that the English colonized. And there's also, which is something that is very interesting, is there's a direct correlation between when school corporal punishment was abolished in a country and the average age of the corporal punishment masochists in those countries. So, for example, in South Africa, judicial corporal punishment as well as school corporal punishment was abolished in 1995. So the average age of the corporal punishment masochists here in South Africa, especially those who prefer the cane and school role play, etc., are 42 years old and above.
Very interesting.
They were the people who were still beaten in school. So I just need to say this before we carry on. I am vehemently against school corporal punishment on children. Any corporal punishment on children in school or in the home. But the school corporal punishment system did create a lot of masochists, corporal punishment masochists. And that's the correlation. So there's a correlation between which country like what type of fetishes and BDSM practices, and also the average age of the corporal punishment masochist.
I can totally agree with you on that. I tend to do a lot of corporal punishment sessions as well. It's something that I really like. And I also note that a large majority of my heavy masochists that want notably the cane and the flogger, but not the flogger just for sensation play, but the flogger to inflict pain, tend to be 60 years and older. So it tends to be a much older clientele where when they grew up, corporal punishment was much more the norm than it is now. Now, you said something, it's something that you said in the book that I think is really important for the listeners to know. And I'm going to read the quote. There's a misconception that severe impact play is violence. It is not. Where violence is non-consensual, sloppy, unpredictable, and angry, my sessions are controlled, calm, sober, and in a consensual environment. And I think that you're saying that is so important because from an outsider's perspective, from somebody that doesn't understand the psychology behind BDSM, what you do can seem violent, but in fact, it's not at all. It's done with love, with care, with benevolence, with intention.
Yes, unfortunately, it is not only in the vanilla world or that there is that misconception. Even in the BDSM world, there is a certain prejudice, often a prejudice, where people want to put everything in a box. So you can do corporal punishment, but it mustn't go above a certain severity. Or you can do school role play, but you cannot do age play. Or you can do, you can pee on people, but you cannot do full human toilet, they are unfortunately, or you can do any type of role play, but you cannot do race play. So there's all these gatekeeping, and it is absolutely absurd. I find it absurd that a subculture as a whole, the BDSM subculture, we all of us do experience prejudice from people that don't know BDSM to a degree. So if you are already somebody who experiences prejudice because you're into BDSM, why would you be prejudiced towards certain BDSM practices? All of it is legal. All of it is consensual. So why would you be prejudiced towards it? I cannot understand that type of thinking.
I completely agree with you. And it's one of the reasons that I went for some kind of what we see as more extreme play, judicial caning, for example, toilet training, hypnosis. A lot of people think that hypnosis is unethical because you're in a slightly altered state. Financial domination, is it ethical? Race play. These are a lot of the subjects that are in the book. A lot of these women are specialized in these subjects. ABDL, you mentioned age play. There's two women in the book that are into ABDL, and it has nothing to do with playing with children. It's the role play experiences. And I absolutely agree with you that even within the community, we have a lot of prejudice. Being a pro dom and a lifestyle dom, when I go out, there's a lot of prejudice against the fact that I do pay for play. And I think that that's so unfortunate, where I'm able to provide a safe and caring space for people that don't have access, that can't come to parties, that can't come to play parties, they can't have a regular partner, that we're able to provide safe and nurturing spaces for these people, I think should be embraced by the community. Yes. But a lot of people say it's not authentic. It's not authentic because I'm being paid for my services. But as you know, we have beautiful dungeons, tons of equipment. How much does a nice quality cane cost? It's expensive.
58 pounds at least.
At least. And how many do you have?
I have, before this tour, I had 110 or 103. So I think I nearly have 150 now.
Right.
Yes.
We invest in our passion. Why shouldn't we get compensated for that? So I completely agree with you that even within the community, there's a lot of prejudices, either against certain practices or against certain philosophies. And it is a shame, like you said, in a subculture where we should embrace each other's differences.
Definitely. And stick together, because when we're divided, we cannot present a good view of us to the world.
Indeed, we have to stick together. We have to stick together. And again, that was one of the goals for the book. Even though we don't have the same philosophies, we don't have the same practices, we don't have the same background or history, that we can come together and create things together and support each other and nurture the community as a whole.
Yeah, the variety of practices and dominatrix that you interviewed for the book is just astounding. That's one of the things that I like most about the book. It's the fact that you literally nearly represented the whole spectrum of what is available, and it's fantastic.
Oh, there's so much more. There's so much more that I want to explore in future editions. I'm really hoping to be able to do other versions of this book. We'll see as the time comes. I have to calm down a little bit. I have several other projects. You touched briefly on corporal punishment in schools playing a part in why someone might come to you for a judicial caning session. What are some other triggers that might influence people into becoming into looking for masochistic play, sadomasochistic play?
So one interesting thing, it's not necessarily a masochistic practice, but in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, nearly everyone smoked, men and women. And a lot of I love asking people where their fetishes came from, what triggered it. And the smoking fetish, I find there are two men. I'll tell you about both their triggers. The one went to visit his one friend, and he was a man in his 70s, so he was small in the 50s. So he went to visit his one friend, and they were naughty. And the mother was sitting watching TV and smoking, and she called them into the room, the living room, and she said to them that if they do it again, she's going to spank them. She's going to spank her boy. And they did do it again. They were too boisterous and naughty, and she called them in there again. While she was smoking, she pulled her boy over her lap and spanked him. But she didn't spank him because he wasn't her son. Even though those days it was actually normal for people to spank other people's children. Anyway, and he has a lifelong smoking fetish, watching females smoke. So that's the mildest form of smoking fetish. This is just watching females smoke, and also being OTK spanked. And there was another man who told me that he's smoking fetish, and he also had an underwear fetish, so a 50s underwear fetish. And he's also a spanker. But anyway, so it was a group of boys at a birthday party. So it was just the beginning of the birthday party, so the food wasn't ready yet. The mother was still getting ready in her room, dressed and everything. And they were just playing before the party. A few of the boys were playing before the party in the birthday boy's bedroom with cars on the floor, and they were using foul language. And she heard them, and she came and stood in the doorway. So she still had curlers in her hair, and she had her underwear on. They're small boys, so she obviously didn't mind being in her underwear, and she was also smoking. And she stood in the doorway of the room scolding them. And she threatened all of them with a spanking if they don't behave and if they use foul language again. So literally that one event triggered an underwear fetish in him later in life. And he said it's one of the greatest regrets of his life is that they behaved after she scolded them, and that he didn't get that spank. Obviously, at that time, he didn't think of it in a sexual way or anything, but later in life, 3 fetishes were sparked by a single event. I mean, it is actually wonderful to hear that. So it wasn't something that damaged him as a child or anything. It was a completely normal thing for the times, to threaten the child with spanking, with smoking, whatever. But later in life, it developed. So it is completely healthy. There's nothing wrong with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do a lot of a lot of medical fetishism. And one of the more common med fets that I have are nylon blouses, the nylon blouses that we see nurses wearing, particularly in the 60s and 70s. And it tends to be really a quite common thread. And often it stems from, I went to the hospital when I was 6 years old and I had a really lovely nurse. She was so kind to me. Or I had a dentist. I had a toothache for 6 months. I finally found this my parents finally took me to a dentist. And I remember the sound of her blouse rubbing up against, and she took care of it. And I didn't have any pain after that, so that these early childhood memories can really lead into some wonderful, unusual fetishes.
Yes.
And
the same thing when you said about the swish of the blouses, nylon fetishes as well. When they're little boys and they run around on the floor, so they only come up to your thigh or whatever, So all they see are these stilettos and these nylons that the women are wearing, and it can be very easy to be triggered into a fetish. But
absolutely.
school corporal punishment, so most people in the world are heterosexual. So I'm just going to chat about the heterosexual aspect. Obviously, I do. It can be any gender or any sexuality, but I'm just referring to heterosexual males. So most of the school corporal punishment fetishists were triggered by a pretty or beautiful female teacher who gave them corporal punishment at some or other time in their school life, whether primary school or secondary school. It was usually a person of the gender to which they would be sexually attracted to later in life, who they found physically attractive, and that person gave them a spanking. So even if it was sore and a little bit traumatic to receive the corporal punishment at the time, if it was only mildly traumatic, it usually doesn't really have a problem, give them problems later in life. It usually leads to a trigger for masochism.
I completely agree. I completely agree. It's very much what I see too. What at the time is a humiliating experience to be put over the knee of someone and spanked, sometimes in front of other people. It lodges in their brain and then later becomes fantasy. And how wonderful is it that people like me and you, that prodoms like me and you, can help these people live out those fantasies again.
Exactly.
Like, how magical is that?
I absolutely love it. I do quite a lot of regression sessions as well. And I do exact reenactments for people. And I love doing that. Yes.
Yeah.
If it's a positive experience, if it was a positive experience for them, then I love doing it. Obviously, I don't always agree if it was a traumatic or abusive situation.
Completely agree. And we do, unfortunately, get requests like that sometimes. I know that it's happened to me. I need to relive this experience where I was abused, either sexually, emotionally, or otherwise. I need to relive that. Can we do that? No, not with me. Not with me. I think that I'm not trained. I'm not a trained psychologist. I'm not a trained psychotherapist, even though I'm very interested in psychology, even though I try to take care of my clients and my submissives as much as possible. I'm not trained to help someone relive a truly traumatic experience. If it's in a role play situation where it's, like you said, not a severely traumatic experience, but one that was just like, oh, I felt so much shame and I want to relive that shame, putting the little boy in the corner. The school role play is one that I do a lot as well. And putting him in the corner, over the knee spanking, making him eat his green beans, because he didn't finish his dinner last night, making them write lines. I won't disappoint Madame Justice again. I won't disappoint Madame Justice again, which remind them of those childhood emotions that were so pure and so innocent. And like you said, not sexually linked, but became sexualized over time.
Yes.
It's so cool. I think we're lucky. We're lucky to have gotten into this path of life.
I find it incredibly exciting and interesting because every single person is unique and their fetishes are unique. Even though I specialize in corporal punishment, everybody wants a different experience. And I love the challenge of that. It's challenging for me to be able to completely satisfy somebody during a session, to completely give them what they want because it's all different.
Yeah, I think that reminds me that even though we're there to satisfy their desires, what's really interesting for me is taking their desires to make sure that I have a good time with them. And I think that's something about being a pro dom that can be kind of tricky to navigate. Okay, you really want over the knee spanking, being put in the corner, and being forced to eat your green beans. Okay, how can Inanna enjoy that? What is it about that interests me? And I think that with years of experience as a lifestyle and pro dom, it's always a challenge and it's always interesting. And like you said, we never do the same session twice.
No,
never. And it makes our job so much fun, so much fun.
But what I also really like about this is how the boundaries are always my own boundaries are always shifting and changing in what I like and what I don't like, or things that I thought I'd never do, which I started liking, like foot fetish, and foot worship. I used to detest it because years ago in a nightclub, I passed out for a little bit, and when I came to, I had like long knee-high boots on, and I was sitting on a sofa, a single sofa at least, armchair, and my ex-husband, was just a few meters from me playing pool, so I wasn't in an unsafe environment. And I woke up with this man. My husband didn't see. There was a man kneeling in front of me, and both my boots were taken off while I was not conscious. And one of my feet was several of my toes of my one foot was in his mouth. So that is what I woke up to. So it was quite a traumatic thing for me. And I thought that I would never be into foot worship. And I started slowly with foot massage because I love that. And then over the last, I think it's been 2 years of the 8 years since I've been doing it, that I've been heavily into foot worship. Now I love it. so the BDSM in a way probably helped me overcome my prejudice and my bad experience, my traumatic experience with my feet, so I love that constantly shifting and changing boundaries and fetishes and interests.
Indeed. We're in constant evolution, and something that I like today, I might not like tomorrow, and something that I loved yesterday is not necessarily what I want to do today. It's not only a lifelong evolution, and the evolution is like this, it's not linear at all. It's not like, oh, okay, I used to like this and now I'm going to like this. But it's wonderful that we're always shifting and changing, and that our human desire is weird, and how wonderful.
Definitely. Weird and wonderful.
Weird and wonderful, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Let's wrap it up. For those of you that want to learn more, that don't already have this beautiful book, The Heart of the Dominatrix, you can learn about Mistress Baton and 20 other wonderful women from around the world. Thank you so much for coming and chatting today. It was a real pleasure. And
thank you, Madam Justice. It was a real pleasure for me too. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. I'm going to have you hold on just a moment. For our listeners, please follow us on Twitter. Visit our websites for more information for Mistress Baton. I'm sure that your tour dates are listed on your website. You can contact her for Fly Me To You dates as well. Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye.